solo trazo de idea, ni aunque el mundo viera puede describir a una rosa pura y bella, la mártir doncella del viejo Caspín. Táhirih, 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 Táhirih.
The Bab, whose name was Sayyid Ali Muhammad, was born in the city of Shiraz in the year 1235 AH, 1819 AD. He belonged to a family renowned for its nobility, and which traced its origin to Muhammad himself. The date of his birth confirmed the truth of the prophecy traditionally attributed to the Imam Ali, "I am 2 years younger than my Lord." At the age of 25, the Bab declared his mission as a manifestation of God, who brought new teachings to a distressed humanity, and who was to prepare the way for an even greater one, Bahá'u'llah, the glory of God. The Bab was also known as the primal point, the light of God, and the Word of God. The Bab revealed to Mullah Hussein, who was the first to recognize him, that
18 souls must, in the beginning, spontaneously and of their own accord, accept me and recognize the truth of my revelation. Unwarned and uninvited, each of these must seek independently to find me.
the Bab named these first 18 believers in his mission as the letters of the living. The 17th letter of the living was known as Táhirih. Superior in both intelligence and beauty, Táhirih was highly esteemed even by some of the most haughty and unlearned ulamas of her country for the brilliancy and novelty of the views she propounded. She became an influential poet and proponent of the Babi faith in Iran. Her life, influence, and execution made her a key figure of the religion as well as an early heroine of women's emancipation. Born in the same year as Bahá'u'llah, 1817, into one of the most prominent families of her time, the daughter of Muhammad Saleh Baragani, she was given the namesake of the illustrious Fatimeh, designated as Zarin Taj, meaning the crown of gold, and Zakiyeh, meaning virtuous, by her family and kindred. From early childhood, instead of taking part in games and amusements like her companions, she passed hours at a time listening to her parents discuss religious matters. Her keen intelligence quickly perceived the fallacies of Islamic science without succumbing to it, and soon she was able to discuss points which were most obscure and confusing. The hadith, or traditions, held no secrets for her. Her reputation soon became widely known in the city, and her fellow citizens considered her a prodigy. Her brother, Abdu'l-Bahá, who inherited the learning and reputation of his father, himself relates, in spite of the fact that he remained a Muslim, at least in appearance,
none of us, her brothers or her cousins, dared to speak in her presence. Her learning so intimidated us, and if we ventured to express some hypothesis upon a disputed point of doctrine, she demonstrated in such a clear, precise, and conclusive manner that we were going astray, and we instantly withdrew confused.
She was present at her father's and uncle's classes, in the same room with 200 or 300 students, but always concealed behind a curtain. And more than once she refuted the explanation that these two elderly men offered in answer to certain questions. Her reputation became universal throughout all Persia, and the most haughty ulamas consented to adopt some of her hypotheses and opinions. This fact is all the more extraordinary because the Shia branch of Islam religion relegated the woman almost to the level of the animal. They considered that she has no soul, and exists merely for reproduction.
ای خفته رسید یار برخیز از خود بنشان غبار برخیز.
O sleeping one, the friend has arrived. Arise. Shake off that earthly dust. Arise. Behold, O heartsick lover of the friend, he who was aloof has turned kind and benevolent. Arise. O frail and broken-hearted one, the consoling physician has come to your bedside. Arise. O thou who art sick with separation, the season of reunion with the friend has arrived. Arise. Behold the new year, teeming with new life. Cast off that dead flesh. Become reborn. Arise.
خمار یار داری آمد می غم گسار برخیز برخیز برخیز.
Táhirih was married at the age of 13 to the son of her uncle, Mohammadi Ghazvini, who was the Imam Jumeh of the city of Kazvin. From this marriage, 3 children were born, a girl and 2 boys. The boys died early in life, and the daughter died soon after Táhirih's martyrdom. While the children were young, Táhirih read and studied the works of Sayyid Kazem Rashti, the leader of the Shoghi movement after the passing of Sheikh Ahmad. It was Sayyid Kazem who gave her the title Qurratul Ayn, meaning the solace of the eyes, through correspondence. Táhirih shared with enthusiasm the ideas of her teacher, the coming of the age of resurrection and new dispensation, ideas with which she was already familiar, the city of Kazvin having become a center for the Shoghi movement. And so began the search for the coming of the 2 manifestations of God as shown in the stars, by the appearance of 2 stars in the heavens, and the rainstorm of the meteorites like the fallen stars promised by the old prophets. One day her maternal uncle Abdu'l-Bahá, who was a believer in the coming of the new dispensation, told her the day of judgment was at hand. One night, after the passing of her master, Sayyid Kazem, she had a dream. In her vision, a youth, a Sayyid, wearing a black cloak and a green turban, appeared to her in the heavens. He was standing in the air, reciting verses and praying with his hands upraised. At once she remembered one of those verses and wrote it down in her notebook when she awoke. In 1844, at age 27, Táhirih became acquainted with the teachings of the Bab, whom she never met, but read his writings immediately after her return to Kazvin. Her qualities of an ardent temperament, a precise and clear intelligence, a marvelous presence of mind, an indomitable courage, all combined to bring Táhirih to take interest in the Bab. After the Bab had declared his mission, and his first book, The Best of Stories, was circulated, Táhirih was reading a section of the text one day, and she came upon that same verse, which she had noted down from the dream. Instantly offering thanks, she fell to her knees and bowed her forehead to the ground, convinced that the Bab's message was truth. Táhirih was so moved that she began corresponding with the Bab. The Bab responded to her with a tablet directed specifically to her as a letter of the living. Although she never met the Bab, she was infused with the true understanding of the revelation of the Bab to such an extent that the Bab in one of the tablets reveals that Táhirih was the culmination of the knowledge of all of his 17 letters.
قرة العینم بیا اندر نوا
با نواهای نوای نی نوا، تا رباعی جمله ذرات نور، ریزی از اشراق وجهی نار تور. جان من برخیز با شور و شرر، در نگر با چشم ساقی در نگر.
When this became known, the scandal was very great and the clergy were shocked. In vain her husband, her father, and her brothers pleaded with her to renounce this dangerous madness. But she remained inflexible and proclaimed resolutely her faith. With fearless devotion and zealous teachings, Táhirih taught her faith at almost every opportunity. The Persian clergy grew resentful of her and endeavored to have her imprisoned and stopped. She battled with her family throughout her life because they wanted her to return back to the traditional beliefs of her family. Through her prodigious eloquence and the astounding force of her argument, she confounded the representative delegation of Shia, of Sunni, of Christian and Jewish notables of Baghdad, who had endeavored to dissuade her from her avowed purpose of spreading the tidings of the new message. Táhirih wrote a poem called Majeh Taglid, about the elimination of clergy and blind imitation of the clergy.
هان صبح هدا فرمود آغاز تنفس، روشن همه عالم شد ز آفاق و ز انفس. دیگر ننشیند شیخ بر مسند تزویر، دیگر نشود مسجد دکان تقدس. ببریده شود رشته تحت الحنک از دم، نه شیخ به جا ماند نه زرق و تدلس. آزاد شود دنیا.
Behold, the morn of guidance has begun to dawn. The whole world has become illumined from Afag to Anfus. No more will the sheikh occupy the throne of hypocrisy. No more will the mosque be a marketplace for piety. The chin strap of turban will be severed. No sheikhs, no haughtiness, no deceit will remain. The world will be freed from vain fancies and superstitions. Humanity will be relieved of all confusion and doubt. Injustice will be convicted by the power of justice. Ignorance will be defeated by the power of thought. Everywhere the carpet of equity will be rolled out. Everywhere the seeds of amity will be scattered. The reign of disunity will be vanquished from all regions. The diverse peoples of the world will become one nation.
Criatura audaz, decidida, que entregó su vida al más grande ideal. Promulgando la justicia, mujer sufragista de fe sin igual. Táhirih, 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 Táhirih,
With consummate skill, Táhirih defended her faith in the claim of the Bab and vindicated her conduct in the home and in the presence of that eminent jurist, Sheikh Mahmoudi al-Alusi, the Mufti of Baghdad. Later, she held her historic interviews with the princes, the ulamas, and the government officials residing in Kermanshah, in the course of which the Bab's commentaries on the Surah of Qatar was publicly read and translated, and which culminated in the conversion of the Amir, the governor, and his family.
Her fearlessness, her skill, her organizing ability, and her unquenchable enthusiasm consolidated her victories in Karbala, which prided itself on the fact that no fewer than 100 of the highest ecclesiastical leaders of Islam dwelt within its gates.
In open defiance of the customs of the fanatical inhabitants of that same city, She boldly disregarded the anniversary of the martyrdom of the Imam Hussein, commemorated with elaborate ceremony in the early days of Muharram, and celebrated instead the anniversary of the birthday of the Bab, which fell on the first day of that month. While in Karbala, the foremost stronghold of Shia Islam, Táhirih addressed lengthy epistles to each of the ulamas residing in that city, who relegated women to a rank little higher than animals and denied them even the possession of a soul. Epistles in which she ably vindicated her high purpose and exposed their malignant designs. As challenges heaped upon her, and achieving victory after victory with the power of reason and speech, she became more inflamed with the love of the Bab, who was now in the prison of Makkah.
گر به تو افتدم نظر چهره به چهره رو به رو شرح دهم غم تو را نکته به نکته مو به مو از پی دیدن رخت همچو صبا فتادم.
If ever I should behold you face to face, eye to eye, I would be bold to count my heart's plaint, point by point, verse by verse. Like Saba, the east wind, I have searched everywhere for your countenance, from house to house, door to door, alley to alley, from quarter to quarter. Bereft of your visage, my two eyes have wept such bloody tears. Tigress after tigress, stream upon stream, spring after spring, brook upon brook. Your bloom-like mouth, your face enveloped with ambergris hair, blossom to blossom, flower to flower, tulip to tulip, fragrance to fragrance. Your perfect brow, your eyes, your beauty spot have preyed on the bird of my heart, sense to sense, and heart to heart, feeling to feeling, and mood to mood. My desperate heart has knitted your love to the very fabric of my being. String by string, thread by thread, rap by rap, and woof by woof. Táhirih has searched every layer of her heart, but found only you there, sheet by sheet, cover by cover, over and over again.
Táhirih was the instrument through which the break with Islamic laws and customs would be made. The Conference of Badash held in 1848 was presided over by Bahá'u'llah, a guiding force among the Bahá'ís, while the Bab was confined in the fortress of Makkah. The purpose of the gathering was to implement the revelation of the Bayan by a sudden and complete and dramatic break with the past, with its order, its ecclesiasticism, its traditions and ceremonials. A secondary purpose of the conference was to consider the means of freeing the Bab from his cruel confinement in Makkah. Bahá'u'llah rented 3 gardens and invited a group of followers to join him for 22 days. Táhirih was the only woman present among 81 disciples who gathered. One of the gardens Bahá'u'llah assigned to Qudus, another to Táhirih, while the third he reserved for himself. Every day Bahá'u'llah revealed a tablet that was chanted before the assembled gathering, and bestowed on each of the disciples a new name. He himself became known by the title of Bahá, glory. Upon the last letter of the living was conferred the appellation of Qudus, meaning Holy One, while the title of Táhirih, meaning the Pure One, was given to Fatimeh, previously called Qurratul Ayn. One day during the conference when Bahá'u'llah was confined to his bed, a major event occurred. Suddenly Táhirih, adorned and unveiled, appeared before the eyes of the assembled companions. Consternation immediately seized the entire gathering. All stood aghast before this sudden and most unexpected apparition. To behold her face unveiled was to them inconceivable. Even to gaze at her shadow was a thing which they deemed improper, inasmuch as they regarded her as the very incarnation of Fatimeh, the noblest emblem of chastity in their eyes. Táhirih stood boldly before the 80 men, and with great dignity unveiled herself, announcing that this was the time to break away from the traditions of the past.
This is the day on which the fetters of the past are burst asunder.
This action caused a great deal of controversy. Some of the men screamed. Fear, anger, bewilderment swept their inmost souls and stunned their faculties. Abdu'l-Bahá, aghast and deranged at such a sight, cut his throat with his own hands. Spattered with blood and frantic with excitement, he fled away from her face. A few, abandoning their companions, renounced their faith. Others stood mute and transfixed before her. Still others must have recalled with throbbing hearts the Islamic tradition foreshadowing the appearance of Fatimeh herself, unveiled while crossing the bridge on the promised day of judgment. Qudus, mute with rage, seemed to be only waiting for the moment when he could strike her down with the sword he happened to be then holding in his hand. Her countenance displayed that same dignity and confidence which she had evinced at the first moment of her appearance before the assembled believers. A feeling of joy and triumph had now illumined her face. She rose from her seat, and undeterred by the tumult that she had raised in the hearts of her companions, began to address the remnant of that assembly. Without the least premeditation, and in a language which bore a striking resemblance to that of the Quran, she delivered her appeal with matchless eloquence and profound fervor. She quoted this verse of the Quran:
Verily, amid gardens and rivers shall the pious dwell in the seat of truth, in the presence of the potent King.
As she uttered these words, she cast a furtive glance towards Qudus. Unruffled, Táhirih delivered a fervent and eloquent appeal to the remnant of the assembly, ending it with this bold assertion:
I am the word which the Qa'im is to utter, the word which shall put to flight the chiefs and nobles of the earth.
Thereupon, she invited them to embrace each other and celebrate so great an occasion. Undaunted, she said,
"Let those who have shared in this great achievement arise and embrace each other."
Because in the Bayan, all imaginings have been shattered, nothing can now be seen in the created universe save Him. Because the Furqan of God was revealed, the name Allah became established in the kingdom of names. His station is Azzam and Allah, the greatest Lord on high. He is Rabbi Akbar, the garden of paradise. So many are the mysteries in the celestial realm, so many kingdoms with the station of Baha.
Baha'u'llah himself commented on the unveiling of Táhirih.
We fell ill one day and were confined to bed. Táhirih sent a request to call upon us. We were surprised at her message and were at a loss as to what we should reply. Suddenly we saw her at the door, her face unveiled before us. How well has Mirza Aghajan commented upon that incident. The face of Fatima, he said, must needs be revealed on the day of judgment and appear unveiled before the eyes of men. At that moment, the voice of the unseen shall be heard saying, "Turn your eyes away from that which ye have seen."
The unveiling of Táhirih was a key demonstration of the thrust of raising the social position of women. This event is considered to be a signal moment that demonstrated that Islamic Sharia law had been abrogated and superseded by Babi law. From a tiny hamlet on the border of Mazandaran, the primary purpose of this conference had been fully and gloriously accomplished. On that day, the bugle mentioned in the Quran was sounded, the stunning trumpet blast was loudly raised, and the catastrophe came to pass. The days immediately following so startling a departure from the time-honored traditions of Islam witnessed a veritable revolution in the outlook, habits, ceremonials, and manner of worship of these hitherto zealous and devout upholders of Muslim law. The clarion call of the new order had been sounded. The obsolete conventions which had fettered the consciences of men were boldly challenged and fearlessly swept away. The way was clear for the proclamation of the laws and precepts that were destined to usher in the new dispensation. The remnant of the companions who had gathered in Badasht accordingly decided to depart for Mazandaran. Qudus and Táhirih seated themselves in the same khoda which had been prepared for their journey by Baha'u'llah. On their way, Táhirih each day composed an ode which she instructed those who accompanied her to chant as they followed her khoda. Mountain and valley re-echoed the shouts with which the enthusiastic band, as they journeyed through Mazandaran, hailed the extinction of the old and the birth of the new day.
O beloved, infatuated with calamity am I in the quest for your affection. How much longer will you disdain me? Too familiar with the pain of your remoteness am I. Alienated from every created thing am I. My face covered and concealed, grief-stricken with calamities, bereft of all companionship am I.
Sometime after the conference, when he was freed from imprisonment, the Bab revealed a special tablet to each of those who had convened at Badasht, and he addressed them by the name recently conferred upon them. At a later time, a number of the more rigid and conservative among the disciples chose to accuse Táhirih of indiscreetly rejecting the time-honored traditions of the past. The Bab, to whom these complaints had been addressed, replied in the following terms.
What am I to say regarding her whom the tongue of power and glory has named Táhirih, the Pure One?
Ni un solo trazo de idea, ni aunque el mundo viera, puede describir a una rosa pura y bella, la mártir doncella del viejo Caspín. Táhirih, 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 Táhirih.
At the same time that Táhirih was breaking away the social traditions of the past in the Conference of Badasht, the first conference of women's suffrage took place in the United States of America, which led later to the passing of the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which gave the right to vote to women.
Decidida que entregó su vida al más grande ideal, promulgando la justicia, mujer sufragista de fe sin igual. Táhirih, 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 Táhirih.
Táhirih was soon arrested and placed under house arrest in Tehran. A few years later, in mid-1852, Táhirih was executed in secret, strangled at night, and buried in a walled garden in Tehran.
Aware that the hour of her death was at hand, she put on the attire of a bride and anointed herself with perfume. And sending for the wife of the Kalantar, she communicated to her the secret of her impending martyrdom and confided her last wishes. Then, closeting herself in her chambers, she awaited, in prayer and meditation, the hour which was to witness her reunion with her beloved. She was pacing the floor of her room, chanting a litany expressive of both grief and triumph, when the Farashes of Aziz Khan Sadar arrived in the dead of night to conduct her to the Ilkhani garden, which lay beyond the city gates and which was to be the site of her martyrdom. When she arrived, the Sardar was in the midst of a drunken debauch with his lieutenants, and was roaring with laughter. He ordered offhand that she be strangled at once and thrown into a pit. Abdu'l-Bahá describes the scene as, "They brought her into a garden where the headsmen waited, but these wavered and then refused to end her life. A slave was found, far gone in drunkenness, besotted, vicious, black of heart, and he strangled Táhirih. He forced a scarf between her lips and rammed it down her throat. Then they lifted up her unsullied body and flung it in a well there in the garden, and over it threw down earth and stones. But Táhirih rejoiced. She had heard with a light heart and tidings of her martyrdom. She set her eyes on the supernal kingdom and offered up her life.
ای به سر زلف تو سودای من، وز غم هجران تو غوغای من، لعل لبت شهد مصفای من، عشق تو بگرفت سراپای من، من شده تو آمده بر جای من.
Before she was killed, she told her executioner,
"You can kill me as soon as you like, but you cannot stop the emancipation of women."
According to an historian,
with that same silken kerchief which she had intuitively reserved for that purpose, and delivered in her last moments to the son of Kalantar who accompanied her, the death of this immortal heroine was accomplished. Her body was lowered into a well, which was then filled with earth and stones, in the manner she herself had desired.
in the words of Bahá'u'llah,
And were anyone to say unto them on their way, Whither go ye? They would say, Unto God the all-possessing, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. These are they who are blessed by the concourse on high, who are glorified by the denizens of the everlasting cities, and beyond them by those on whose foreheads thy most exalted pen hath written, These, the people of Baha. Through them have been shed the splendors of the light of guidance.
thus into the life of this great Babi heroine, the first martyr for women's suffrage. As Bahá'u'llah explains,
When the channel of the human soul is cleansed of all worldly and impeding attachments, it will unfailingly perceive the breath of the beloved across immeasurable distances, and will, led by its perfume, attain and enter the city of certitude. That city is none other than the Word of God revealed in every age and dispensation.
ای عاشقان ای عاشقان شد آشکارا.
Lovers, O ye lovers, the face of truth has become manifest. Lo, the veils have at last been removed through the power of Rabbul Falak, the Lord of the Dawn. Arise, each one of you. In Baha, the face of God can be seen. Look, like sun at daybreak, shines with compassion and delight.
خدا بنگر بسر لطف و صفا آن روی روشن چون شفق.
O ye great ones, the Creator of the age has fashioned the universe into a paradise. This must be the day of resurrection, when morning light shall drive away all traces of darksome night. The time for rectitude has come. Perversity is in retreat. Indeed, everything you longed for, law, order, justice, has at long last appeared.
کجی شدن در کاستی آن شد که آن میخواستی.
Injustice and iniquity have vanished from our midst. Now is the age of charity and munificence. All feebleness and frailty have been replaced with sustenance and power.
during her short lifetime, Táhirih achieved remarkable feats.
A highly gifted woman, she undertook the translation of the Bab's lengthy commentary on the Surah of Joseph, the Qayyim-ul-Asma, for the benefit of her Persian co-religionists, and exerted her utmost to spread the knowledge and elucidate the contents of that mighty book.
In the house of Bahá'u'llah in Tehran, in the course of her memorable interview with the celebrated Vahid, she suddenly interrupted his learned discourse on the signs of the new manifestation. Holding Abdu'l-Bahá, then a child, on her lap, she vehemently urged Vahid to arise and demonstrate through deeds of heroism and self-sacrifice the depth and sincerity of his faith by saying, O Yahya, Let deeds, not words, testify to thy faith, if thou art a man of true learning. Cease idly repeating the traditions of the past, for the day of service, of steadfast action, is come. Now is the time to show forth the true signs of God, to rend asunder the veils of idle fancy, to promote the word of God, and to sacrifice ourselves in his path. Let deeds, not words, be our adorning.
From her pen flowed odes attesting, in unmistakable language, not only her understanding the revelation of the Bab, but also her recognition of the exalted, as yet undisclosed mission of Bahá'u'llah. She proclaims in many of her poems that mankind has been recreated. The age of maturity and reasoning for mankind has been realized, and a new reality, born of spirit, is being revealed to mankind, where the frequented fane has been built. A new Quran is being revealed. It is the end of blind imitation and time to do away with superstition and mindless traditions of the past.
During the height of her fame and popularity in Tehran, women in that capital city flocked to hear her brilliant discourses on the matchless tenets of her faith. The magic of her words pulled them away from other festivities, such as the marriage of the son of Mahmud Khani Kalantar, in whose house she was confined, to listen to her message.
At the conference of Badasht, her courage to boldly take her place as she affirmed the distinguishing features of the new revelation clearly marked the new order permanently divorced from the laws and institutions of Islam.
Undeterred by the vehement protests of her father, her husband, and her brothers, and undaunted by the measures which the civil and ecclesiastical authorities had taken to curtail her activities, with eager energy Táhirih advanced the Babi cause.
قرة العینم بیا اندر نوا با نواهای نوای نی نوا تا ربایی جمله ذرات نور ریزی از اشراق وجهی نار تو. جان من برخیز با شور و شرر در نگر با چشم ساقی در نگر.
Through her eloquent pleadings, her fearless denunciations, her dissertations, poems, and translations, her commentaries and correspondence, she persisted in firing the imagination and enlisting the allegiance of Arabs and Persians alike to this new revelation, in condemning the perversity of her generation, and in advocating a revolutionary transformation in the habits and manners of her people. Many great leaders throughout Europe have praised this remarkably gifted woman.
O Táhirih, O Táhirih,
exclaims the great author and poet of Turkey, Süleyman Nazim Bey, in his book on the Babis.
You are worth 1,000 Nasruddin Shahs.
A tribute was paid to Táhirih by the mother of one of the presidents of Austria, Mrs. Mariana Heinisch.
The greatest ideal of womanhood has been Táhirih. I shall try to do for the women of Austria what Táhirih gave her life to do for the women of Persia.
Abdu'l-Bahá himself has said about Táhirih,
She was the calamity of the age, a brand afire with the love of God, a lamp aglow with the bounty of God.
Está latente la más fresca fuente del más bello ser. Táhirih, 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 Táhirih. Sarrinta corona de oro, eres un tesoro a la humanidad. Tu vida fue guía y faro, anunciando al claro la firme igualdad. Táhirih, 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 Táhirih.